I love this jingle, yes. Uh, so, we are in our last row now to the final, but we want, you know me, I am not to present myself. Christian Delon, I'm the Secretary General of the World of Travel, and I'm happy to welcome you for this session. But what haven't been said that I have a large history in the industry because I spent 30 years of my life in the airline industry, mainly for Air France, then for Amadeus, 5 years in Paris, being a general manager for France, and at the end, I spent 12 years in my life by Atout France with the ATO, the National Tourism Organization of France, as number 2. So, and I'm also elected in a light and nice territory in the Pyrenees as the counselor in charge of tourism. So I have this 360 degrees view on the market. So, as seen in the earlier sessions, the path forward is being guided by the business travel sector and perhaps technology, what is yet to come. Who should be the stepping up and how it will travel change the future of the other sectors? Who knows? In this session, we want to recapitulate the key elements for stepping forward sustainably and as an industry, but as a sector, as a power, but sector by sector. And we'll see that the members of the panel are going to represent one sector specifically. Where are the gaps and what actions are required? The promising sessions during these 2 days provided true thinking insights. I am very happy with that because it's all about transparency. And what it comes in my mind that we need this transparency. We need the things as they are. If they are true, yeah, or it's such bullshit. It's a lie. Because all the stakeholders has to know what happens in the other sector, unless they will act differently and not properly and not in the good direction. This edition shows that we are in a rollout process to implement sustainability in every business and every sectors. But we also learn that some sectors are late because the standards are not ready and not fixed yet. The mindsets are to evolve, and I would say evolve up to the top. The technology is not yet existing or no enough in existing, and for aeronautics, won't really before decades. We're in a kind of wrap-up session, and I asked the panel, I have also asked them just before the session, to refer to the insights provided by all our talented speakers. So, first of all, I have the honor to welcome Dr. Carl Wurster. He's a diplomat, but he's also Director of Economic Development at USAID. He's going to explain what USAID is, but we had already explanation. That is the development leader in the market. And Dr. Wurster, you will give a summation of where travel and tourism should be headed based on his expansive background on every continent, either than in energy, economic, developmental policy functions. I leave you the stage and the podium. I stay on the stage.
Put this over here. All right. Thank you, Christian. I think I'll have to temper expectations a little bit. So as Christian said, my name's Carl. I'm with the U.S. Agency for International Development, and I'll say what our former President Reagan said, I believe, in the early 80s. I'm with the U.S. government, and I'm here to help. I think that's a scary thing usually. But seriously, it's an honor to be here. I'm not an expert in the tourism sector. As you said, I'm a diplomat. I'm a bureaucrat, but I've been around the block a little bit. Throughout my 15-year career with USAID as a diplomat, I've lived in a number of different countries that both benefit from tourism or are developing a tourism sector. I started in Morocco. As we all know, that's a very robust destination and great place to visit. After that, I went to Congo, where Kinshasa, I don't think I met a tourist the entire 2 years I was there. But it still wants to have tourism. Every country wants to have tourism. From Congo, after 2 years there, we spent 3 years in Bangladesh. And Bangladesh is aspiring to be a tourist destination, but there's lots of challenges that don't allow it to happen. From there, I spent 2 years in Nepal, and everyone knows Nepal is a fantastic destination. You have the Himalayas, you have trekking, you have adventure tourism, very well developed, and it's a very, very important piece of the economy in Nepal. So it's great to hear about people developing projects in Pokhara and other places in Nepal during the last sessions. From there, I got pulled back to the U.S., and I worked on digital agriculture. But digital agriculture, I think, is actually a really strong connection to the AI session that we had earlier today. And I'll try and draw some parallels to that in some ways in which we can probably come together with lessons learned from other sectors in that space. And then finally, the last 3.5, 4 years, I've been in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And as you've heard a number of times from my colleagues, Ibrahim Mostra and Feja Begovic, Bosnia and Herzegovina is a developing country for tourism. It's someplace that we're hoping can be a leader in sustainable tourism in the very near future. And that's something we're very proud of, but we'll get into some of those issues later. But USAID in general, it's actually a quite large organization. We have 100 different countries that we work in around the globe. Our annual budget is between $30 and $50 million, $30 and $50 billion annually, depending on the year and how much Congress actually gives us at that time. So there's a lot of opportunities to do a lot of good in many different countries around the world. Economic growth is one area that we work in, and tourism is seen as a really important driver of economic growth. As far as my phone times out with my notes. We see tourism as an opportunity to create economic stability, to create jobs, but then also to push, and something we heard about previously is around kind of social and behavior change. It's a way in which we can bring in a lot of outside ideas and influences to many different countries that are looking to develop tourism to promote sustainability when it may not have been thought of with previous tourism ventures in the past. And I think Rajan mentioned or talked about this earlier, maybe yesterday, when we're looking at doing work in developing countries, in countries that are yet to be strong destinations. I think it's a really interesting time to work there because in many ways you have a cleaner slate. You can work on sustainability from the ground up and really have it embedded in the work that's being done in the tourism sector in those countries. And that's something we've been working on with Bosnia. But one thing I wanted to highlight though is, as I've been listening to sessions throughout the last couple days, it's really the power of the private sector to push a lot of this stuff forward, to push a lot of these sustainability agendas forward. And there's two things I wanted to highlight. One is when we're looking at setting up policy spaces and regulatory environments, we do with USAID, we'll design the projects and we'll get consultations from local and international private sector, from the local government, from local and international NGOs, and from citizens, obviously. But I think the governments really listen to the private sector. They see them as innovators, and they see them as many times trusted partners to develop new strategies, new policies, new regulations that can help them advance their economic agendas. And that's the real important thing, is it's all about the economic agenda in that case. So it's, I think, something that I challenge people in this room, people at this conference, to really think about how you can proactively engage with governments to help them better design policies, to better design policies and practices in that space. And I think one of the ways you can do that is working with international donor organizations like USAID, like the UN organizations, like the EU, and finding ways to insert yourselves into those conversations. I think that's a really important contribution that can be made going forward. The other area I think that's very useful and interesting is around greater collaboration and coordination. We've heard about that. I think every session has talked about coordination and collaboration, both amongst private sector actors, between governments, within NGOs and others. But I can't highlight it enough that public-private partnerships are often what would really drive governments to implement these policies, because many times in the countries that at least that I'm familiar with, budgets are small, and it's very, very difficult to actually implement what's going on. So it's really important to partner with the private sector, to work and engage with the private sector to find ways to fill some of those budget holes. And then finally, just one quick look, and I think we'll probably talk about this a little bit more, and we talked about it quite a bit, is data transparency and data sharing. And it's how can we get together as a group with common interests. And I think, Isabel, you mentioned this in kind of this pre-competitive space, to figure out ways to share data, to understand how to pool information that'll benefit governments, that'll benefit NGOs, that'll benefit the whole tourism sector in the future. So with that, I wanted to give maybe a very short anecdote about, I think a lot of this seems like a very daunting task. It seems virtually impossible. And I think we're told sometimes that sustainability seems to be impossible, or addressing climate change is impossible. But there's many, many times in human history and recent history that we've been able to come together as groups or individuals and figure out how to do the impossible. So I really want to encourage everyone to continue to work together, continue to collaborate, and bring our minds together and come up with really positive solutions to help solve sustainability issues going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wunster. You have seated by me, so it's okay. I'm the pleasure to announce this thought leadership panel that should be amazing, I'm sure. And I'm the pleasure to announce, first of all, Nico Nicolaus. Nico is the co-founder of the CEO on Trees for Travel. I will explain what Trees for Travel means. Yeah. Phil Allanen, that is the head of sourcing and sustainability, EMEA, APAC of Wyndham Hotels and Resorts. Emily Rees, who is virtual and certainly able to listen to us.
I'm remoted, but I'm not virtual.
But you will explain why, Emily. There is one reason, one special reason.
I could.
Okay. Who is the Chief Sustainability Officer of the Pierre et Vacances Center Park Group. Louis Gendry, I should say, but I'm French. I have no reason to pronounce his name with an English accent. And Sanit de Wijiruyeritne, who is Director and CEO of Climate and Conservation Show. So I want you to applaud them. Yes, because they're all very deserving to be there now. So, Nico, I'm going to begin with you. So you have achieved a great job on advocating, implementing, accompanying trees planting programs in the industry. We know that tree planting can be controversial. What can make it remaining an effective solution for keeping on offsetting the carbon prints? Maybe first of all you can explain what Trees for Travel is.
Okay. Hi everybody. Thank you, Christian. And yes, people are skeptical about tree planting, and they should be. The thing that we do up until now, we have always planted trees, and we've always backed up our trees with with certified carbon credits that actually back up exactly what we claim the tree will achieve. However, over the last 2 years, we started this during the pandemic. We've learnt a lot over the last 2 years, And then we decided that there had to be a better solution to carbon credits as well. Even though carbon credits are very useful to sort of like spread wealth, to support communities and things like this, we do the supporting of the communities at the moment through tree planting, but we also see that companies needed something more tangible than carbon credits. And to turn carbon credits from being something that is a cost to a company to becoming something that is an asset for a company. So on the basis of that, we created Zero. Now Zero, we've heard a lot over these past 2 days about collaboration, globalization, looking after communities that we visit who have no chance of being electrified, having electric vehicles, or companies who are spending so much money trying to sort of like become sustainable, but then having not very much to show for it. So what Zero is Zero's being created as a crowdfund platform for the industry. It's a way for the industry to collaborate, to have a shared ownership, so that every single company can actually engage in a very small, low-risk manner. So it's a way of actually, our aim and our hope, and we've had some very, very positive conversations up until now since we started launching this, is about actually just adding 1 tree per booking. So we're actually doing the nature side still, but then with every single tree, the partners will receive a share in Zero. This means that it's an owned entity by the industry. It's not just give us the money and we'll see what we do, and we'll let you know next year. This is something where we can all have a decision, all have a say, and we feel that the collaboration, there's never been a way of us all really collaborating in a solid manner. This can be used for sustainable fuels in developing countries. So everybody, you can decentralize the production of sustainable fuels. But you can also work in the hotel sector, so you can help to build wind farms or solar farms. But by working together and choosing the projects together, we can achieve so much. And that's the basis of Zero. So I hope I didn't over-answer the question.
You have answered
or
the
under-answer
question and
it.
even the second one. But anyway, I want to go back. How does it work concretely? You address to the buyers or to the business a certificate. They participate to the decision. How can they participate? Only by voting or giving their insights. And the other thing is, does it concern all the industry or only SMEs and developing countries?
This is, I mean, at the start is actually with some large partners, but we're welcoming everybody. And it's just basically by people committing to planting 1 tree, which is actually $3 per booking. And $1 goes to the tree planting, $1 goes to running the company, and $1 goes to investment into Zero. But everybody will have an electronic vote, and every single tree comes with a certificate. So you get a certificate of planting, and you will actually have shares in the company as well at some point. So that's how that will work. Did I answer the question okay?
I'm going to go back to you afterwards.
Okay.
Sanit, I'm so pleased to see you in person because we're always seen us and speak virtually. But it's the first time we're meeting. So welcome. We have prepared this session. You said, it sounds to me very interesting, that it is time to develop in-setting. We are always speaking about offsetting, and you are speaking about in-setting. And to develop these in-setting programs to mitigate the carbon emissions, but other things. Can you tell us more about this new vision? But that is new, brand new. And that leads the company to transform their processes, because I have heard that it leads the company to think about how they work.
Sure. Thank you so much. And yes, it is great to meet in person. In-setting is essentially the same as offsetting, but traditionally carbon offsetting has been done outside the company's value chain. Think of it very simply as outsourcing the carbon reduction to somebody else. You could outsource your legal work, you could outsource your IT work, you could outsource your customer work, because they can do it at scale, at a low cost that you can't do internally. So it outsourced that to somebody else. And globally, those carbon registries govern the issue of carbon credits. And for the most part, and I know this last few months there have been some controversy around some of the carbon credits, but for the most part, they have a reasonably robust system of verification and so on and so forth. But behind the verification lies a certain amount of the science. You have to prove, in the case of trees, for example, how fast the tree grows and how fast it sequesters carbon, or in the case of renewable energy, why it reduces carbon. So there's a pretty robust, tried and tested process. But many companies, I've been working in this space for the last 12 years. Our company was set up to do exactly what Christian said, to galvanize the private sector to do more of this stuff so that we can all work together in a shared vision of the future. Most companies wanted to do it in-house, even if they couldn't. They would be more receptive to doing it as it's our project. So carbon insetting is the same process behind the science of the calculation, the traceability, the verification, the accountability, but it's done with a project within the company's own supply chain or your value chain. So it could be in the next to your factory that you operate in, or it could be in the local area in the countries that you outsource to, or it could be in production facilities that you work with closely. But it follows the same process. It has the same rigor. But it's not every company that can do it because it has to happen at a certain scale. So, a small, medium enterprise will find it very difficult to do, put a large-scale wind farm or a solar farm or renewable energy or things like that. But some of the larger global companies can very easily do it. We've been working with a few in a couple of the regions that I work in, and they're very happy with it. So we have forest projects that are insetting, we have renewable energy projects that are insetting, and they both work very well.
Yes, I was wondering whether it's big company that can achieve it or small company, because big company, they have everything to think about, every teams to implement, every element to calculate, figure out. But the big company, the small companies, how can they do?
So, I mean, what you're saying is correct in a form, because when we talk about carbon reduction, we have to remember that we have to differentiate it between carbon mitigation and carbon reduction. So day-to-day business decisions that make business sense, like putting a solar panel on your roof because it's cheaper than the electricity you pay for, doesn't really count as carbon credits. That's just business as usual. The global carbon markets have a very strict policy of additionality. You have to prove that this would not have happened in the usual course of business. Now, for a SME, I wouldn't recommend trying to do an insetting approach, because when you have 5 people or 10 people or 100 people in the company, the resources are not there to expand into something that may not be directly related to reducing one's own cost. But the moment you come into that medium scale category, 1,000 people in the company or 2 factories or 3 factories, it becomes a little bit more tangible. So you can do it. The costs are not huge. Nick is talking about $1 per tree.
3.
Or $3 per tree. Okay. So in many carbon projects worldwide, external carbon projects, you're talking about very similar pricing. So it's not unaffordable, but it may not be for everybody at this point of time. But for the small scale enterprises, there are lots of other solutions, lots of things that you can do, which you should do in the meantime.
Thank you, Senator. I am on last question. It's mainly a question of behaviors, mindset, and acceptance, mainly. And from the stakeholders and from the partners of the stakeholders, on everybody who is contributing to the business. So it includes customers, managers, decision makers, even local governments, national governments sometimes, and even medias, because they are here. What can lead them to move forward really and to say, yes, we are able to promote and implement the possibility of insetting and of doing something different, maybe to change the business model, maybe to change the prices, maybe to change the marketing, maybe to change all the processes?
I think there are possibly three things that I would suggest at that point. I think the first thing is Carl and his colleagues in the development sector could play a vital role in that. Because very often, especially for the small and medium sector, what is needed is that initial push to get something up. And development agencies do that. And if you see more development agencies coming into markets that need it and saying, hang on, we will give you that kickstart of capital to invest in renewable energy or clean cook stoves or something to that effect, that will give the much needed capital boost to the small and medium sector especially. The second part, I think we've talked about it in many of the sessions today, clear, transparent communication about everything that's behind it so that people understand it's not just whitewashing or greenwashing that's happening. There's some robust science behind it. There's accountability. There's traceability of what you're doing. And the third is you need complete endorsement by the state sector. Very often you'd find that the state sector has multiple players that are pulling in different sides. I come from Sri Lanka, and a good example is when we try to do mangrove projects in my country. If the mangroves are on the seaside, they belong to the Coast Conservation Department. But if they're on the land side of the river, they fall under the Wildlife Trust, except the ones that are in the local secretary's duration. But there's also a section that's run by the Navy, so they have that. There are 6 different people, so they don't pull together. So at a very high level, you need state sector endorsement to say, listen, we want to encourage projects like this, whether it's insetting, whether it's capital investment in these projects. And once you have a unified endorsement by the state mechanism, I think then you succeed.
Thank you, Sanit. Phil, as Sanit showed, that the amount of people to change is completely amazing. And you are a franchising hotel chain, though, so you're facing this diversity. You need to convince the people first, and to make them change, to give them insights, means, tools, whatever. Do you have a magic wand to make it happen? And how can you manage your partners? Because I was head of the partnership in Air France. I know the partners are a nightmare to move.
There is no such thing as a magic wand. Unfortunately, if there was, I don't think I'd be here. It is.
Please.
It is a challenge. Can you hear me okay? Sorry. I hope everybody can hear me. There is no such thing as a magic wand. And as you say, Wyndham Hotels and Resorts is the world's largest franchisor of hotels. And so we have a lot of disparate stakeholders, really, across multiple different countries. We operate different brand tiers from economy all the way up to upper upscale. So there's a lot of challenges to overcome there. However, as a brand, what our franchisees expect from us is a framework of how to do things and where to start, and they expect that thought leadership from us in order to be able to give them a step on the ladder to improve things. So we've got a range of tools that we deploy to help franchisees do the right thing when it comes to environmental sustainability. First of all, we created the program. So the program is the Wyndham Green program. Like a lot of the hotel sustainability programs, it's graded. So the very first level requires properties to do the most basic things, underpinning all of it actually is the measurement and data. As we spoke about earlier, data is so very important. So we require our hotels to report their utility data and their consumption to us on a monthly basis, which we then use to help them calculate their emissions. And then that first level looks at some of the other basic things, such as linen and towel reuse, elimination of plastics, etc., etc. So first of all, we give them the framework. Second of all, we have created the brand standard. So we've made it mandatory that our hotels follow a brand standard. In the franchise world, brand standards don't always work. But what I've actually found and been very encouraged by is that of really a lot of our corporate programs that are governed by brand standards, Wyndham Green is the one that's seen the most traction of all, because there really is this desire for franchisees to do the right thing and make their businesses environmentally sustainable because of the fact it will make their business more sustainable in the long term. One of the things that's interesting to note about our franchisees, especially those who only have one or two hotels, what we call ma and pa hotels, they're family businesses, and it's in their interest to make sure that they have an asset and a business that is going to be sustainable for their next generation. So they're really bought in onto it. And they find the framework that we give them really encouraging and really helpful to get them started in the right way. So using that base of smaller franchisees who have really kind of led the way for us, especially in some diverse markets where you might not think there would be progress. Using that, we've been able to influence the larger, more institutional franchisees to do the right thing. So that has helped. The other thing I would say, and I know this has been spoken a lot about here, is we're finding the MICE sector driving this as well. So whilst not a magic wand, it's another stakeholder who's really influential in making sure hotels and the hotel industry does the right thing, because they set very exacting standards as to where they will allow events to take place. So the MICE sector is very good at setting a standard and saying, we will not use your property unless you meet a certain minimum environmental standard. And so therefore that has been a very good influence on that group of stakeholders and getting them to do the right thing.
Thank you, Phil. It sounds like spoon feeding, in fact. You are covering several markets on several continents. Europeans are said to be in advance in and more understanding of the challenges of the sustainability. What about the emerging and developing countries? What is your experience to say there are other places in the world that are maybe moving faster, and why?
It's a great question, and I'm going to call out two regions specifically from EMEA region. So we find that India is the country that is taking our sustainability program the most seriously. So we have, I looked at the numbers this morning, 92% of our franchisees in India have already met the brand standard, and of that 92%, nearly half have gone through and worked their way through to the other levels of the program. And again, it's the nature of our business in India, which is very much family businesses where families have one or two hotels. They are dynastic in what they want to achieve. They want to be able to pass on something. And India has really been a beacon for us and an inspirational country to drive the program forward. It's fascinating. A lot of our franchisees in America have heritage that is based in India. And so this is another excellent connection where you see the extended family networks looking back into India, and now we're seeing that influence happening into the US and the extended families in the US talking to each other and saying, actually, there is a real value to this. Not only the environmental imperative, but also the business benefit you get from efficient operations at your property that is a dividend of doing something environmental. Another region I'd call out is Turkey. So Turkey, we have 104 hotels in Turkey at the minute. Turkey, I'm sorry.
Please.
Thank you. Exactly. That is another country where we're seeing a huge step forward in the engagement. And again, it's partly the nature of the franchisee model there. It's smaller scale businesses who are really engaged in seeing their businesses become environmentally sustainable and as a result, more commercially viable. So those are two countries where I think typically you would see getting a bad rap, but really are leaders for us.
Thank you, Phil. Emily, I'm going back to you. You're in Paris. Why? Why are you in Paris, Emily? Explain. And then you will explain what Pierre Vacances is. But first, why are you staying in Paris?
I really like Sevilla and Spain, but the thing is, it was not possible for me just to explain my everyday's job to try and lower our carbon footprint, and maybe to not to travel for just 2 days and fly to a place to spend 2 days and coming to Sevilla to tell you this. So, but next time for sure, if I can go by train or if I can stay 2 weeks with my family in Sevilla, then I will come for sure. But
you know, there is one participant who was coming from London by train. That's a long way. Yes. She spent more than 24 hours, but then she made it. So
Wow, congrats. Mm.
I've been following Pierre et Vacances. Oh, I should say in French, Pierre et Vacances. I'm following Pierre et Vacances Center Park for years, maybe decades now, and that's an amazing company. And I want you, because it's very French, in fact. I want you to explain really what such a company can provide to change the holidays and the getaways.
We're also based in Spain, huh?
I
And I
know,
know
I
that
know.
there are a team from no, but for the public that there is a team from Pierre et Vacances Spain with Oscar and Laure and all those management team. So what do? We spoke a lot about carbon reduction, and the thing is, we've been developing our brands. So there's Pierre et Vacances, but there's also Centerbox, based in Belgium, Netherlands, and Germany, and also Adagio. And so we've been operating sites for 50 years now. It's as we've all experienced, COVID was kind of a big challenge to overcome in the tourism industry. And thanks God we're still here as a company. But though something is new is really coming, not new, but a game changer is climate change. And so we've spoken a lot about carbon reduction, and we need to design and really to implement a carbon pathway. And so it's not negotiable, and we need also to adapt. So on the first side of carbon reduction, the first thing we do is working on our direct scope of influence, and that is energy reduction and developing renewable energy. For instance, we've invested in a wood boiler in France, in Normandy, to change a former fuel boiler. This said, in our industry, as we all know, it's a very fragmented sector. This is to say that when we take the carbon footprint of a stay of one of our clients, the first category would be transportation, the second catering, and the third would be housing. So you know that we come on at the third step. So we definitely need to work in partnership, and this is what Pierre Vacances Spain is doing, for instance, to offer local catering offer. We do this also, and we try to develop this in center parks. And we have also offered recently. I mean, it's a current offer. We have made a partnership with SNCF, so the train operator in France, and we offer a financial incentive to our guests if they come by train.
So I
I
understand
don't know
that.
if I answered the question somehow.
No, I have. I keep on having my question, but I'm going back to that question. But to follow you, the solutions are inside your company, so you are not against what Sanit said in setting, but not only. You have to refer to all your stakeholders, and even for the people coming from the other sector, transport, for instance. So, I mean, it's all about cooperation, it's all about mitigation, and it's all about planification, because you need to have this in mind. You can make efforts, but you're useless if the other ones are not doing efforts. How can it work? I mean, I was quite amazed about the cooperation with SNCF. We know all of us that are not a very agile company. How did you cope with them?
With who?
With SNCF?
Ah, yeah. I
You-
mean, it took
not
time.
only smile.
It took time. No, but I think that the SNCF is typically.
I have to
kind of
explain what SNCF is. SNCF is the French Railways company, national company.
Mm, mm. I think that many operator, we are all conscious, aware that we need to offer a lower carbon, let's say, stays and vacations. So we need to take our customers on this path of low carbon local holidays, or on to try and decarbonize our activity, but still to remain attractive, because low carbon stay is not attractive in itself. It's what you do, how you share things. So how did we convince them? No, they were convinced. They are much bigger than we are. But the thing is that we really wanted to create the momentum with this partnership. And what was strong and is strong is that, let's say, an operator like us would tell its client, you know what? If you come by train, we've negotiated for you that you would pay less your train tickets. And this is the new train. We do not sell any transportation usually.
Yeah, you have said
Just
everything. Everything is related to the money and to the prices.
yeah,
And
to
what
the
about the
price
last?
and to the train creation also, I think.
Yes, of course. And what about the last miles, the last kilometers? Because people are arriving in a station, you are not nearby the stations. How can you cope with that without carbon
Yeah.
emitting? Because if you're relating to the cars or to the buses,
Oh.
you are emitting carbon.
Of course, and this is what has been said previously many times. It's that we need to cooperate. I mean, our client, he has his client's journey, leaving home with suitcases, children, and he needs to arrive at his vacation place. And no matter who operates what during in each step of his travel and his stay. So yes, we need to cooperate. So concretely, we first of all selected some destination for this specific partnership with a railway French company that would be accessible. Plus, we in certain center parks also we have a specific partnership to make sure that there would be some shuttle from the railway station to the park.
Yes, and my last question for you, I want back to you, of course, afterwards, but I wanted you to explain the product design, because the product design, when you have a center park, it's an opportunity for the people to have vacation or getaways nearby their home, nearby where they're living. And by the way, they are proposed to live as if they would have been with friends at the countryside or elsewhere. With Pierre et Vacances, it's more about resorts, ski resort, beach resort, sea resort. So, but not unreachable. That reachable by car, reachable by train, but not really reachable unless by air. So, the design you are proposing to the market aim the market at changing its behavior to have holidays. And I wanted to emphasize that you are doing a lot of work on that. Do you have results for that? I mean, do you have the conversion for people who are wanted to go very far and, well, because and owing to you are staying nearby? And maybe some words about village nature as well.
I mean, yeah, I don't really get your question. Is the question how do we try and attract people in our sites when they could leave or
On
fly
the
very far
nearby
away?
sites. So you have a proposition for the people for the nearby and a proposition for the people to have a staying holidays in a longer vacation and in a longer for in a longer range from Nepal. So how does it work? Because it's two different things. Are you coping with the two? Are they the same customers or are they completely different customers?
Oh, yeah. Roughly for center parks, the average distance that is traveled by our clients is 250 kilometers. So it's quite nearby. Um, we do address specifically European customer, and we won't try. And for the moment, and I hope we won't, because it's not in the spirit of what we're trying to do. Very broad and far away market like China or so on. Um, and the thing is, we've been really shifting over the last maybe month or few years from really, let's say, a real estate offer. We have some apartments come and there's a kitchen and so on, to a destination offer. And when you go to Pierre et Vacances website, for instance, it's much more clear what that we do promote a destination more than the apartment in itself. And we have had, and maybe we will showcase this in the next time, that we have had this advertisement campaign saying, okay, when I think that someone has traveled 11 hours from Seattle to see this beautiful scenery of Provence, when I just come from 2 hours away. And this is the new approach to promote Pierre et Vacances offer.
So thank you, Emily. I wanted to just to point out that the product design can change the behaviors of the customers, and we are not really only on restriction. I mean, we have a lot of means within the companies to change the business model, to change the product design, and to make the people change. Louis, you are from Roland Berger, that is a consulting group that we all know, and this is a sort of control tower, viewing all the faces of the market. The issue for the travel and tourism sector is the extensive number of stakeholders. How can you help them to cooperate, and how can you provide all of them with KPIs able to compare each other and to adapt themselves to the efficiency of the whole trip, not only their part of the trip?
Yeah, thank you, Christian. So, I mean, first point I wanted to stress is that maybe something that was, as Didier said from the panel this morning, first of all, is the industry is improving its impact on by a unit basis, right? I mean, this is based on the data, the WTTC data that we had the chance to give you a preview of. Like, for the 10 years before COVID, every dollar of GDP generated by tourism, the impact, the carbon impact of that dollar decreased by 17%, right? So the industry is already moving forward, but the problem is that it's growing so fast that even though its carbon footprint by unit of GDP is lowering, overall it's growing faster than the rest of the economy because and so its carbon footprint is going faster than anybody else. So good thing is we're already on a path to net zero down the line at some point, hopefully, but we have to go faster because we're growing so fast, right? Secondly, I think it's to Phil's point a little bit and to answer your question, I think something that wasn't stressed enough maybe is investors also think a lot about sustainability, right? And it's not just mom and pops and families that you mentioned, but we work a lot with private equity firms and all their investors and themselves, they're very wary now of investing in any industry that doesn't have a clear path toward a more sustainable business model. Why? Not because they're all tree huggers now, but because they know that if they don't, the value of their asset, the value of their investment will decrease, and they might not find somebody to buy what they're actually investing in now in the future because regulation will change, customer expectations will change. So investors are pushing, to some extent, right, for more sustainable solutions in all business model because it's in their own interest now, and the momentum we keep creating at our little level here, but pushing for has an impact on investors' way of thinking and overall the impact on the industry. But then what can you do on top of that? I think we've seen a little bit of everything, like in this panel, right? You have, first of all, you need to give customers the transparency of what their choices entails, right? You tell them exactly what their travel footprint will be based on each of the solutions they choose. So you have to have access to the data. That's where all those AI solutions may help to some extent. But okay, especially gatekeepers in the distribution part of the travel, they have this ability to gather and compare and enforce some sort of data comparability to say, okay, this travel will produce X amount of CO2, this one X, and then you can help the customers make an informed decision based on that. Secondly, you can give them options to be more carbon efficient. That's what Emily was saying. Okay, you can tell them, okay, if you go by train, it will be cheaper. That's what the gentleman from Radisson said yesterday. You can go to our hotel and maybe not get your linen clean every day, so it will be less water and less energy use. So that's point number 2. On top of just giving information, you can give them access to business model or tools so that they can themselves be less carbon, have less of a carbon footprint, right? But then you have the in-setting and offsetting. I mean, it's not like one or both, right? We have to do so much so fast that we need all of it, right? Offsetting doesn't replace, I think, any of the efforts that everybody's trying to put in buildings, in airplanes, but you do need it because otherwise you won't get to the net zero that we're all aiming for. And so finally, obviously, you do need at some point government support and incentives to invest in new solutions because, as we talked about many times, air travel is a big issue. Cruises, an industry, has an issue as well in terms of technology, right? You do need some new to develop and on a bigger scale, new technologies for the biggest headache, which is transportation in driving a net zero for the industry. So I think collaboration is obviously a big issue, but transparency, pushing investors more still to be cognizant of their impact on the value of their assets, and pushing solutions throughout the value chain, and is also key to achieve that.
Thank you, Louis. I think you have, Nico, something to say about that.
Me, yes, please. Sustainability is not a local problem. It's not something where we can be Pierre et Vacances, who are lucky enough to have most of their clients coming from local sources, or like Wyndham, where you've got great people who are working to sort of like repair their properties. Sustainability is a global problem, and we need to start looking at it as a global problem, and we need to look for a global solution, not just a solution that can help our businesses look better. I look at airlines out there, okay, and they're all talking about direct air carbon capture. Direct air carbon capture uses more energy. It takes more energy to actually capture the carbon than you actually save from if you use that energy elsewhere. So if you put that energy back into the electricity grid, you would save a lot more energy and produce a lot less carbon. But it makes airlines look good. Okay, it means that they can actually say, yeah, we're going to suck the carbon out the air. I'll tell you where the best place for carbon is right now. The best carbon store we have is fossil fuel in the ground. It's worked for millions of years. It stays there. It's us that is taking it out and sticking it back in the air that means that we have to then try to pull it back down. Now, if we were to produce the sustainable energies ourselves that can be shared and that can be produced anywhere in the world, it means that not only are we decarbonizing, because the other thing about sustainability is it's not just about carbon. Every single person on this, I think you're very aware of it being something that's community-based, where we can use our position as a travel industry to prove and to educate about how we as an industry can decarbonize, but how we can also spread the love, if you like, but help communities become self-sufficient, give them ways of producing their own fuels so that they're carbon neutral fuels, so that you're not only decarbonizing your own business, but you're helping communities decarbonize their lives.
I totally agree with you there. Sorry we're going a bit off piece, but I totally agree.
This is a discussion.
And I think this is where the hospitality industry, specifically the hotels, can have something to play. So one of our pillars is support for communities. And we're not unique in that. A lot of other hospitality companies do exactly the same thing. Hotels are centers of their communities, they're centers of employment, they're centers of consumption. And as a result, they have an obligation, they have a duty of care to that community to employ people in good terms and good conditions, but equally, exactly as you say, have an opportunity to be able to set the standard when it comes to consuming things such as energy. They can help influence regulation. we have a couple of examples where, for example, waste recycling has not been available in a location where our hotel is, and the hotel comes to me and says, I can't meet this requirement of level 3 that I'm going to recycle all of this. What we've done is get all of our hotels within that country, gone to the administrations and said, we need this recycling, and we've been able to do it. That's the power of collective purchasing, and it's the power of the industry bringing its voice together.
But
Sorry.
Phil, I just want to ask Dr. Wurstel, is dealing with local governments, and we're never speaking about them, because local governments has a real structural role. They are having the land policy, they're having the infrastructure policy. Without them, I'm saying always that the very real boss of this destination is the mayor. So how can we, because we are speaking about communities, but communities is an overall word. It can be embodied by institution. What about what about the local governments? How can we involve them, and what are the levers that are at their disposal?
I think the local governments are part of the community that you're talking about. You know, they're the decision makers, the policy makers at that local level that can facilitate a lot of the sustainability practices that we're hoping to get to. You know, it's when you're private sector looking to develop a hotel or another business at a local level, particularly in a developing country, you have to engage and develop those relationships. And I think, you know, as a development organization, we're pushing that sustainability aspect, and that's part of the policy framework that we're working on to ensure that the local government kind of buys into the sustainability piece of it, which then makes local and international investments more sustainable as they move through it. So I think they're vital partners, but they're also can be fickle partners too. And I think, to be honest, you need to realize that local governments work on, as all governments, work on political time horizons, and sustainability is not a political time horizon.
Agreed.
Sustainability is a long-term time horizon.
I do.
And we need to recalibrate, and that's why I really think, you know, when I was talking about the private sector pushing and continuing to push, that's the advantage, is you're working on a longer time horizon, and we can work together as donor agencies, as private sector, to really push this agenda forward, regardless of kind of the political structure that's in place in different locations.
I completely agree that the timeline from a political one is different to a corporate one. Political ones typically 4 to 5 years. Corporate ones, exactly. Hence the fickleness. But I totally agree, because there's a symbiosis. Of course, the hotel, the brand, they have to work together. I always encourage our hotels to go and speak to their local authorities, because they're a great source of funding as well. I'm a procurement person from my original days in my career, and I love free things. Any procurement person will say that, and I will say to my hotels, if you want to get some funding, go to your local authority and say you are embarking on this as part of your relationship with us as a brand. You'll almost certainly find some kind of funding to change something within your property to meet the requirements. It's a great relationship.
Thank you. I want to ask you a last question for each of us, each of you. You have spent the 2 days here in Seville. We have breathed a lot of insight, very interesting, trustful thinking, transparency. What are, in one sentence, for each of you, what you are going to remember and to keep in your bag when you're back in your countries? Senit.
I think one of the key takeaways for me is the degree that this industry has moved in collaboration. I think Emily had a really great initiative about the trains, which I had never heard of before. But it's amazing that the hotel can now, negotiate with the train company and get that. So if they can do this, many other hotels, many other travel companies can do this kind of cooperation out of the box, not thought of before, but in today's digital age, this cooperation, this partnership is possible. So all we need is the will to cooperate like this, and I think we can make a much, much bigger impact working together across the supply chain.
Thank you, Senate. Louis?
I think transparency is a big issue. Obviously, carbon impact data for everybody to see it, to compare. I think for investors and customers, government, obviously, that's still something we need to work on, I think, as an industry. I mean, it's moving in the right direction, but giving the customers the right information to make an educated choice, I think, is the way to go.
Don't you think, Luis, that we are in the rollout process now? Because in the previous edition, it was about awareness, about recovery. This was not blah blah blah, but this was not very concrete. I heard a very concrete solution.
I think, just is it for me the question?
Yeah.
I mean, it's energy transition overall. It's like a decades-long process, and it has started, as I was trying to stress, 20, 30 years ago, even before, for some industries, right? So I think carbon. I mean, you look at engines are more efficient right now. The transition has already started even before we start really talking as big, as much as we are now about sustainability. So we were kind of doing it without knowing it, maybe. But now, I think every year, obviously the awareness is bigger and the urgency keeps getting up. So I think we were already in a rollout phase, but I think every year the intensity gets higher, which is good.
Thank you, Louis. And Phil, now?
I completely agree with Louis, and I think transparency is key. There's too much certifications out there. There's too many. It's a real sort of duck soup of certifications. But what I'm actually going to talk about is, we talk a lot about the E, and that's great, and we should be doing that, but we mustn't forget the S in this as well, which we touched on a little bit there. We must continue to focus on the social side of it, especially as the industry is growing now back at a speed that it was pre-pandemic. There's a lot of opportunity for complacency to creep in the labor supply chain, in the extended product supply chains. We must make sure that we continue that focus on the social side and not forget that and leave that behind, because it's just as important as the environmental bit.
Thank you, Phil. Your turn, Nico.
So the takeaway I have is the biggest word I heard all week was collaboration. And an example of collaboration is not actually just reducing carbon from a hotel property, but looking at a region like, for example, in Indonesia, where you might have a resort of 5 different hotel brands, for us all as an industry to go, right, okay, that place is running off of coal, let's install solar, let's install wind. That way the hotels are not put under pressure, so they can continue to reduce their emissions through improving their premises. But also, if we're going to collaborate, we should also collaborate and take responsibility along with our clients or our travelers. We should use our position to educate. We should not sit here and do this quietly. We should be noisy about it. We should actually reach out there, tell people this is how you can do it. And if you give them the incentive, such as like with Zero, that they could actually, eventually, they will be able to have an ownership, it gives them a real connection. And I feel that the real connection is missing. I think that there's actually, you know, we're all going, yeah, well, you know, we'll put some insulation in, we'll put some double glazing in, we'll change our light bulbs, we'll, you know, or we will suck carbon out of the air or whatever. I think that there's so much more that we could do, and it can be simplified. And I think that we need to collaborate. But when I say collaborate, we really need to collaborate, not just talk about it. You know? Sorry.
Thank you, Nico. Dr. Wurstel.
I think everyone's covered a lot of the points that I was thinking about, but it's along those collaboration lines. And I've really learned that this sector is collecting enormous amounts of data. That data, I think, works in silos, and the collaboration of that data to really understand how to use it to drive sustainability. We had a session about AI earlier, and I think the question that wasn't answered for me was, how can AI drive sustainability? And that, I don't think we're there yet, and I think we have a lot to learn And I think collaboration and working together and combining data sets, combining information, doing it proactively, doing it thoughtfully, doing it intentionally, as you were saying, Nico, that's the most important take home that I have.
Thank you. Emily, you didn't attend the whole event, of course, but I have a question for you. The question was, what did you learn from this edition? I mean, all the panel was on site. You weren't, but you have heard about World Travel, and you have heard about what we're doing. According to you, we are in a rollout process now, but very scarcely we are going forward step by step. And do you think that if we pursue, we can find a way to reach the goals? And if is it so important to reach the targets? Is it so important for, I mean, the blah blah, and sometimes for the communication, sometimes for the governments, but it is more important to climb the ladder. And I think that to climb the ladder towards the top, the target is more important, because if we keeping on step by step, we'll reach the top. And I think that it sounds to you.
For me, and this is how I see my role, is that we need really to be scared. It's not a very positive, I am a very positive person, but I really think, for instance, for a snow resort, it's definitely, it won't be anymore. It's the end of the white snow era. So let's face it, but it's not the end of the tourism in mountain. Not for sure. It's a new era. So we have to be courageous enough to admit this, to share this together with the data and so on, with transparency, and then to build a positive impact tourism that will be the next one for the next coming years, with those challenges embedded, and not just to make as if it was not existing.
So we need a lot of edition of a World of Travel to pursue and to share. So what myself I want to wrap up and to remember some words that you have heard and that are important. Maybe that's all of them call for action. Transparency. I mean, we are all agree on this word, transparency. And maybe it's one thing that happened here, to give the real world and to be real aware of what's happening. If the airline industry cannot reach the goal, we must know. They must say, period. So transparency, behaviors, funding, cooperation, alignment, and spoon feeding. We must pursue, must very perseverant. And this is a virtue that I want to share with you, perseverance. Thank you all. So now I think it's your turn, Rajan.